Before we begin the review, I just want to start off by saying this may be a mixed bag of review than a positive one or a negative one, but I'm very glad at the very least that the game is finally out after over a decade. I've played the entirety of the game until the end just to make my own review with fair criticism, and I've played many games to find that kind of enjoyment that's being made by passionate game developers who uses every limited resources needed to make a game that they want to make, while also keeping my expectations at a minimum, since there are times where a trailer or a demo may differentiate to the final product. Now, Last Aside was a kind of game that I kept it to a minimum, since the fact that it takes inspirations from both games, from its free-flowing action of Devil May Cry and its unique storytelling and world-building of Final Fantasy, and mixes them both to bring out something very unique. Unfortunately, the final product didn't match much to what the sole developer envisioned, aside from its great combat and the lack of marketing, lackluster storytelling, and it should have became a bestseller, but instead met with the polarizing reviews and was kept out of the darkness. So before we get into the game, we need to go back to 2014, for where Bing Yang made his first Unreal Engine 4 animation to his very big game. In 2014, a college kid by the name of Bing Yang released his first video on YouTube as an animation test on the Unreal Engine 4 during his college years. Looking back to it, it looks very rough, yet passionate, that made him look upon the vision that he wanted to make, which is to make a Final Fantasy Versus 13 game-like that we never got before, until it was changed to Final Fantasy 15. It wasn't until 2 years later, in 2016, where he released his first trailer of the game and managed to attract public attention and has garnered over 4 million views, and he even got positive comments on the work that Bing did as the sole developer, despite the fact that he barely has any skills in game development whatsoever. But this has attracted to a big game publisher by the name of Sony to step in and emailed him if he ever wanted to make his dream game a reality, in which Bing accepted the offer. Right after college, he founded his own studio, which is Ulti Zero Games, as his project would be part of the China Hero project, which is financially supported by the PlayStation Hero projects as part of gaining attraction from underrepresented regions. Despite his inexperience as a game director, Bing released video after video in which he would also develop a capable team up to 40 people. It wasn't until the pre-order video in this year that was announced that we actually got a release window in which we finally get to experience this game that many of us have been waiting ever since 2016, or hell, even that Unreal Engine 4 animation test. They even showed off more trailers showcasing the gameplay, as well as going gold for a month of release. And when it was finally released, it was unfortunately met with a polarizing review, and even some red flags beforehand from releasing a demo a day after the game is released. And there is barely any review embargo whatsoever. Many have tried the demo for those who haven't pre-ordered the game yet, and many of them have passed the game instead of wishlisting it. Now that we've caught up with everything that's happened, I think it's about time to talk my experience from playing a game from the beginning to the end. Okay, unscripted moment here, spoilers alert. The combat is the only positive thing I'm going to talk about, while the rest is just a bit dookie and a bit no-no. So yeah, let's get into it. Alright, the main meat of the game is the gameplay. Now, it's always going to be a full-on hack and slash action with some RPG elements to it, which gives you the arsenal needed to vanquish your enemies. Now, there is some light elements of RPG by using a skill points to unlock new movesets, expand slots for potions and accessories, increase stats, and each with 4 weapons, etc. Now, each of the weapon is used in battle gives you an edge of how you approach your enemies, plus on how you do different moves, either killing on airborne or doing a high damage with elemental damage. Speaking of which, for example, a sword is used as an ice element, or a greatsword used as a flame element. You also have Arena's powers, which are special abilities used as a powerful attack, but with a cooldown mechanic, which can be slotted up to 3 slots, which you can also upgrade them, as well as having your own devil trigger. Now, as much as I like its free-flowing action, there's 3 gripes that I have, which is the boss fight length. Now, the boss fight is a spectacle and challenge for the highlight, but at the same time, it feels very long, where the health bar above it has a number of points of how many health it has, but also a stagger meter, in which to complete it, you can do a high damage of doing different movesets or a finisher before it refills. The issue is that when you defeat a boss, it instantly cuts to a cutscene where it feels off as you've done much damage to it without having a special slowdown or a special finisher as you have done from other action games. Second gripe that I have is a stamina bar, which why the hell would you even put that in the first place? Like, I mean, sure, it would fit to any other games like a Souls-like or a strategy game that implements that stamina bar, but why would you even put that in the first place? Like, I mean, sure, like if you're trying to like not overdo a special movesets or dodging or blocking too much, but unfortunately whenever I try to dash out my way from powerful attacks, it depletes in a faster rate. While surely it does refill quickly, but I feel like it's more punishing than rewarding. Like, for example, a game like Bayonetta, where if I were to dodge the attack in the right time, I would initiate a time witch mechanic which slows down time and gives me an advantage to attack for a few seconds. Not to mention the fact that the movesets that I want to use for changing up a gameplay for a limited number of uses just before I use my normal attacks, or even worse, a block or parry that feels off whenever you try to block. Like, it circles around you as an animation and not an actual block or parry. Even when I'm not trying to block or parry an attack, it's very hard to get used to. And the last grab that I have is a damage indicator. Whenever I get hit, I wouldn't even get notified that I'm actually getting hit, like a sound effect or a indicator that I'm actually getting hit. Like, no, you wouldn't even know as you try to attack enemies from different directions. But the only time that you know you're actually getting hurt is that when you get to a low health, which covers the red image that covers like half of the screen. Now, there's this challenge called the Dispersed Dimension Challenge, in which it acts as a secret mission which gives you different challenges to complete. And even though if you don't complete them, you can go back to the checkpoint girl, I don't know what's her name, and replay them. However, the only 2 gripes I have with this is that one, is not actually explained this to you in the game, which you have to find them in hidden areas by yourself. Like, it was either me or the game itself, I don't know. But also the second is that it locks your hotkey potions for healing if the situation becomes dire, in which kind of sucked for me. So I only have done like some of the challenges that I found them easier to do. Now, other than the flaws of the gameplay, I think we got to talk about the optimization. Now, there's like a lot of items and chests to like find as well as pickups, but the issue is that, for example, there's plants to like find, but the only way to get them is by actually whacking them instead of using a prompt button, which kind of feels very weird and forced at the same time. While also the majority of the items that I get kind of feels useless, the fact that they're only used for crafting a potion, which I only use for healing potions 100% of the time, while also other potions like a stamina potion or a potion for refilling Rayna's powers feels unnecessary, as it fills up in a matter of seconds without them, even in battle. Not to mention the fact that I barely use any items to sell, which feels very useless to like carry around for getting more gold. Especially with gold, the fact that it feels very cheap as I try to buy something important like a health upgrade or a special's Rayna's power upgrade that I get as much as I need to get things easier. And even chests that sometimes that are hidden feels unrewarding, as you only get mostly potions or items that you would barely use in your entire playthrough. Now, despite the fact that the level design is very linear, even though you have a map, it can sometimes be less helpful, especially when at the hub area, in which only appears at every end of the chapter before you go to the next island for a long linear chapter. It wasn't until at chapter 4 where I have no choice but to open a map, even if I were to miss something other than upgrades that I didn't look into, since the minimap doesn't even help you at all. Like, if you were nearby something that I've even missed multiple shops that I can go into, aside from the checkpoint girl. But I've saved up mostly what I have, more than 6 grand of gold, just to buy health potions to like craft, but also new accessories, powers, health upgrades, etc. Now for the accessory part is that there's 2 types, one for the weapons while the other is for the armor, which is known as trinkets. Now trinkets I don't actually mind, since most of the time they're actually super helpful in either battle or in other stuff for like support. Now weapons on the other hand feels very finicky as they try to equip them for boost stats, in which you're also given an option to like place whatever you want in an interesting way in customizing them, but it feels very rough as it can like phase in or phase out without actually attaching to them in a way that you want it. And instead I just only use it to like phase inside the weapons that's been barely seen, or just like float around wherever you want it. And I can understand that it gives you the creativity of customizing your weapons accessories, but unfortunately in this one it feels very poorly executed. Now the only second and positive thing that I want to talk about aside from the combat is its world design. As you explore through different areas, you're given a big view of the world that feels very alive and unique, especially the dimension segments in every near end chapter feels so open that you really want to explore and discover. And also the small quick mini games where you have to collect orbs or collect a numbered orbs in a matter of time, in which increases the level skill points, and it did help me upgrade my weapons as I could, even though there isn't much variety to it. Okay, another unscripted moment. The story and character segments is going to be a short one because there's barely anything to talk about aside from its lackluster dialogue between the characters and the main characters, the villains, etc. So yeah, enjoy that. Now, not all games need to have a perfect story in a way that it makes it more cinematic than with movies, or hell, it doesn't need to have a story at all. However, for Lost Side's story, since the game is going to be an action RPG, it needed to grab the player's interest if they want to follow the story, characters, and world building. Unfortunately, it fails to do so with characters lacking most of the parts of their personalities. Most of the characters that you meet can be forgotten easily, as it focuses mostly on the gameplay part, while the story is just an afterthought until completing a chapter that it gets story progression on what's going on. They're unfortunately not given any moments that they want to display that would engage with the audience, and they're nothing more than just bystanders that you only see and talk to for just a minute. And even the story is nothing to write home about. The fact that it borrows the classic trope of collect a number of crystals to save the world type of thing, and there isn't any character arcs at all whatsoever. Speaking of characters, the main character Kaser doesn't open up a lot to his character aside from his background, especially with Rayna, a dragon-like void drax who's always on his side throughout the journey, and there's barely any conflict between the two when there's a moment of doubt on what they're fighting for, and they only get along just fine throughout the entire game until the end. And I kind of wish we gotten something with the dynamic difference between the two. Even the main antagonist doesn't even help at all, with just being a nuisance of getting our way of collecting crystal in each dimension and conquering the earth with the void drax as the only race, and then conquer the universe after that, without having actual motivation that we're motivated to stop the antagonist. There's also major and minor antagonists, but we barely get to see them do anything most of the time, like Victor, whom you only fight once, and as well as the Emperor, who's ruling the Empire with an iron fist. Now again, the characters didn't even help at all of carrying the story itself, and kind of left me with focusing the gameplay more instead than with just following up the stories, the characters, or wherever they kind of dialogues they just talk to, even though I have to watch the cutscenes that unfolds later on. Overall, it took me around 20 hours to beat the game if you're not doing anything like small mini games or challenges. However, the weird part is that it's priced at $60 as a base price, which would put some people off as they would expect it to be a high quality AAA game. But instead, it feels very AA and a little AAA because of the fact that with some cutscenes and sound effects feels very off. And I don't mention the fact that the English dub feels very flat compared to other available dubs like with the Chinese and Japanese dubs.
You need to be taught a lesson.
I want to also clarify that I didn't buy this game just because of the pre-order trailer, but also the vision that Bing Yang back in 2016 had. Time and time again do I get reminded that this game exists, and I wanted nothing more than praise and that someday I would play it for myself when it finally releases. Now honestly, I don't know what to say. The fact that there's a lot of issues with the behind the scenes situations, like the article from Bibbly, in which you should actually give it a read and at least try to actively translate. And I'll leave a link in the description below. I wish that someday that the entire team from Ulti Games would create another game with the experience that they're now given from developing Lost Side for years, and without the pressure given to them by the publisher, and wished the best of luck that Bing Yang would never give up his vision in making his own next dream game.
Gravity plays, two stars aligned by our own fate. You're my shelter, our shared desire, once lost in time.
No! I don't want to die! Ah!